With the techno universe expanding every minute of every day, it is unlikely digital living expert Lindsay Smith will be out of work tomorrow. She follows tech companies, their leaders, and the geeks who could become the new Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. Lindsay is the CEO of Massive Media Inc. She's a Wired woman and digital living expert. It is my pleasure to welcome Lindsay Smith back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Hello, Fanny.
Social media and the Liberal Convention. Fascinating to watch to see who was tweeting, how they were attracting younger voters, which they did, younger members of the party, which they did. Can we blame it on that thing?
Yeah, well, it's funny here because I just brought, as you were talking about social media and the role of politics and Christy Clark, I thought I'd just quickly bring up her, the Twitter feed and see what people were saying about Christy and the latest things. And I mean, you can see everything here from congratulations to Christy Clark, so people reaching out and sending her direct kudos. Lots of negative Nellies about Christy Clark winning. I hope the losing side doesn't sabotage her like was done with Paul Martin. So just a lot of general comments about how people feel about her winning the election. So you can see the social side of it, and I think you asked the gentleman in the last interview whether or not they felt that social media played a role in politics. And they were kind of like, not really sure. But I think that what's happening is we're in a stage where social media is connecting people together so that you hear voices a little bit louder, voices that would typically be quiet, perhaps not media voices, like voices from the public are coming forward and having a platform in order to share where they would not have been able to share before. So in order to see metrics of whether or not that's working, we have to look at how many Twitter followers Christy Clark has, how many people are actually mentioning her in their tweets and things like that. And those metrics, the party may not have actually looked at those types of things, but you can actually see with reporting tools today. I mean, I haven't looked at her campaign, but you can see what's going on, whether or not that's actually having an impact and an influence. And like you mentioned, with the younger generation, a lot of them are using social media tools and interaction and status feeds and updates in order to connect and communicate with one another. So it's something that we can't ignore.
No, ask President Obama.
Yes, well, and he didn't ignore it, did he?
No.
And actually, did you hear recently about all the controversy over Malcolm Gladwell, who spoke at F5 last year?
Who wrote Blink and Tipping Point.
Yeah, he's really well known for his kind of innovative thinking on collaboration and social economics. And he kind of criticized that social media cannot create a social movement. And that was that whole thought that he's been sharing over the last year or 2 years has kind of been proven wrong with everything that went on in Egypt. Because the whole overturn
and Libya,
the
whole Arab world.
Yeah, so I mean, that government actually had to shut down their social media and Twitter and shut off the internet for a bit because they didn't know how to deal with all of the voices of the community coming forward. And then I believe it was Google and Twitter that actually combined forces in order to create an application that connected people more closely through it. So
you bet.
It's definitely having an impact, and it is powerful, and it's I mean, a million voices that are able to connect together is far more powerful than a few. And you think for a social revolution, being in a room with just 3 to 5, 10, 100 people, how is that more powerful than reaching out to a million people? Well, the idea is this weak ties, strong ties. You have strong ties with the people that you're in that room with face to face, but you have weak ties with all of the social media people. But I think that's shifting. I think you can build relationships with people online and get to know. I mean, look at all the people that are meeting and dating online now. I think have you seen the commercials? 1 in 5 people meet online on a dating site.
And you see, I don't know whether or not Premier Gordon Campbell tweeted. I'll have to ask him.
We should find out.
But
I don't know.
Now that Christy Clark is the Premier designate, will she continue to tweet? And if she does, because once you're in the spotlight, in the chair, you have to be careful about what you say.
You do have to be careful, but I think there's also something, it's definitely a balancing act, but there's also something very powerful about not being too the more in the spotlight you are, it's important to show people that you're not too powerful or too busy for them. Taking the time to reach out to the average person who's, a hardworking citizen, it means a lot. It shows that you really care and you're not kind of above, your head hasn't gotten bigger than the place that you are in your life.
Well, the whole demand media thing and the new media and who blogs and who doesn't blog. I mean, I read the Huff Post all the time, Ariana Huffington, yes.
Yes, yeah.
So a whole new world, really. which asks the question, the battle for the digital newsstand. Who will win it? What's the battle about?
Well, I think that overall, the digital newsstand, are you referring to the fact of what mediums are we going to?
Yes,
are we reading it through our iPad? Are we using it through e-reader? Are we going, which newspapers are going to actually battle it out and attract the most audience attention?
Which newspapers will be left standing, printing?
Yeah, well, I think that is an ongoing debate, and I would say that the ones that can develop, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about content, and it's about understanding how your audience wants to absorb that content.
Sure.
So if your audience, the age demographic of your audience still tends to prefer a paper as your medium, then those publications will be fine for a while. But if you notice the demographic of your if they're early adopters or they're in a younger generation, there's a trend and a movement towards reading most of your articles online, reading them through a tablet device, reading them through your smartphone. So if that's the case, then it's really just about having a good technical team and vision for how to transform that content so that it's easy to consume in a digital format. And I mean, the Globe and Mail has done a phenomenal job of doing that. They've got an iPad application, they've got mobile ones that allow you to see the paper on your iPad the same way you would see it, like the same way you would open it, but then you can dive into different sections by clicking on it and actually get sort of an HTML version of it.
Right. I'm not sure Kevin Falcon didn't have an app. I'm not positive.
I'm not sure if he did either.
I think, I hope I didn't make that up, but if you want to, say you're running for a leadership of a political party, or you want to be the next CEO of Apple, whatever, can you get your own app? Can I have an app?
Well, this is a huge debate.
How does that work?
You could have your own app if you wanted to. There's two ways to kind of look at consuming content through your mobile devices. That is through having an app that's built for you that runs off that device, or having a mobile website. To the average user, we may not understand, or they may not know the difference between whether or not they're using an application or just getting a link that looks like an app, but really you're just linking through to a mobile application, because they're getting better at building out mobile websites that mimic the look and feel of an application. The main difference between the two of them is a mobile a website. You have to make sure that it's not, how do I say this in simple terms, that it doesn't have a lot of big images on it, so it can download to the device easy, whereas when you're running an application on your computer, you download it all at once and then it runs off your device. So you have like games and things like that would be better in an app format at this stage. The drawback to that is that right now applications have to be built for all different platforms. So if you're building an application for the iPad, that's very different than building an application for the Samsung Galaxy Tab, which runs off the Android platform, or something for Nokia or things like that. So it gets quite costly when you're trying to do that.
So I won't have an app, but maybe one day.
You could have a mobile website.
I could. Okay, let's go there, and I can start to tweet.
But
it begs a question. If I tweet, Fanny Kiefer tweets, do I have to check with my boss about what I tweet? Like, how does that work? Because I'm here, I work at Shaw.
Yes.
And I guess every company has...
I think that's a conversation you need to have with your boss.
Exactly. But you know, every company must have a policy. Right?
Well, actually, I've got friends that have just started up booming media companies in this, because a lot of larger companies don't have policies, and they're bringing consultants to guide them on how to develop that. The rules and regulations around that, because you don't want to. You need to maintain the transparency, the open level of communication, the genuine nature of what social media provides.
Right.
But at the same time, you're right, you don't want to get into a situation where you're slandering other employees.
Or say, I'm in the most boring meeting I've ever been in. No, I know better than that.
Yeah, you would.
But to say, you know, Lindsay Smith is here, Deepak Chopra, we had a lovely conversation. Okay, let's go to the Academy Awards. You didn't watch, I watched.
I didn't.
You didn't watch.
I was blogging. How nerdy is that?
Well, that's nerdy. And we were Googling. I'm telling you, first of all, my kids recorded it. I'm watching upstairs real time. They've recorded it so they can zip through the commercials, do whatever they need to do. Then they can back up, because I hush people. And they hate that. When I'm watching the Academies and somebody's giving a speech and I want to hear it, I'm always going, shh, shh, shh. So now they can rewind it so I can hear it.
So now you can hear it.
Isn't it great? But we had Google fever. It's crazy, isn't it? The
Google,
way we absorb it to
yeah.
say, oh, didn't they do such and such? They go, I don't know.
Oh yeah, so that was, I think we might have talked about that last time, but just this concept of us moving into a time where we're not just watching television, we are absorbing content through our mobile devices and through our laptops when we're sitting in front of the computer so that we can research, we get questions, we're absorbing.
Right.
I think we're just getting smarter.
No, I know. Was Anne Hathaway on Broadway? Because she can sing. Who knew she could sing? I didn't know. And I said, well, I think she was on Broadway. Someone says, no. So now we're having the side discussion, all of that. Yeah. Did you see The Social Network? Have you seen that yet?
I just saw it a couple weeks ago. I was a little late to the game. But yeah, I found that interesting.
Tell me the story there. Zuckerberg.
Berg. I just call him
get it.
Zuckerbug. Oh, I'm going to call him that from now on.
I know, well, we do.
Bug.
We do when we're just tricking. But his real name is Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook. What's that battle about?
The story is essentially about Mark's kind of taking the vision of Facebook from him being in a college dorm at Harvard and taking the idea all the way through to the company of taking it, I think, public and basically his rise to fame is what it's about, and the process of kind of betrayal and loyalty that goes along the way with the business relationships. I have to say that when I watched it, it reminded me of the growth of any company. A lot of people thought that it portrayed certain characters in a really negative light. It showed Mark as very introverted and disengaged from the world, and I have met lots of brilliant people that have that exact same personality, and there's nothing wrong with it. They're very gifted. And so it's just an interesting story to watch that process and that evolution. And at the end, it's a guy that's just passionate about connecting people online and watching his metrics and his algorithms. I loved how they just. Do you know what an algorithm is? Or
I do in math.
In math, well, it's the same. It is. It's a mathematical equation that we use, search engines use all the time, or that Facebook will use in order to determine what type of content will appear on the web page for people. So. It basically takes the user's interaction with the website, watches their behavior, watches the friends they have in the case of Facebook, and it will feed them ads or different content based on that. So you know when you're on Facebook and an ad pops up that relates to your interests, or it knows that you're not friends with somebody who's friends with somebody else. It uses algorithms in order to calculate all of that data and feed you a completely unique experience in web.
Well, it's pretty fascinating, I have to say, but going viral these days.
Yeah.
I mean, look what happened to Bieber, and then there's the young girl who Gaga picked to open her show. Lady Gaga, the young girl.
She picked a girl to work with or to open?
Yeah, to like be with her on the show. One of the shows. This young.
Culture. Okay.
Oh, we have to get you
yes,
in, girl.
Right. Okay.
In, girl. Well, ask Rashad, my producer, about Gaga. He knows everything.
Okay.
He's a little monster, don't you know? Now, take me to Apple. The fate of Apple, one of the world's most powerful tech companies. Steve Jobs ill.
He's ill.
Seriously ill.
He's ill, and every time, this is the third time that Steve's had to step away from the helm due to illness. He hasn't publicly announced what the illness is, but we do know he's had pancreatic cancer in the past
and a rare form, according to the press.
Yes, to the press. And so Tim Cook is the COO, and so he's stepped in for the last two times and is stepping in this time. They just had a shareholders meeting last week to discuss whether or not it should be mandatory for Apple to come up with a succession plan for Steve Jobs. It was voted down because people at this stage, or most of the shareholders, or at least enough of them to vote it down, said that they are confident enough in internally for the company to be able to figure out that succession plan without having